Hi, I'm Marianne DiMascio, and this is Green Scene, and I'm here today with Matt Dyer from Hanson and Jeanne Ryer from Marshfield. And our topic today is plastic bags, single-use plastic bags. Some people love them, some people hate them, but there is some consensus about the fact that plastic bags, once they're around, they stay in the environment for many, many years. I believe it's over 500 years. You see them in trees, you see them in lakes and seas, and a movement has been going on in Massachusetts, around the country, around the world, to try to figure out what we can do about this problem of waste from single-use plastic bags. And so today we'll be talking about what they've done in Marshfield and introducing a plastic bag ban, and what is under consideration in Hanson. So I'd like to have our guests just briefly introduce yourselves for a minute. So Jeanne?
I'm Jeanne Ryer, and I'm a citizen activist from Marshfield. I'm a retired librarian at the Norwell Library, and I got interested in plastic bags. A group of us were concerned about the environment and thought, what could we accomplish if we put our heads together? And it seemed like a doable project. Mm-hmm. So many things like trying to save the EPA were a little beyond our means. So we thought, what was something we thought we could accomplish? And we worked with an organization called massgreen.org, mm-hmm. and they provided us with a lot of help. And we met with a lot of boards in town and tried to educate the public about the issue, and then brought an article to town meeting last April, and it was supported. So it just went into effect on January 24th, and I'd say it's going well in town. So we were really excited.
That's great. Thank you very much. We'll get back to hear more about those details too. Thank you. And Matt.
Yeah, my name's Matt Dyer, for those who don't know. I'm a Hanson Selectman as of last year. Mm-hmm. And I grew up in Hanson, and I was really a part of the Student Environmental Action Committee up at the school. And it was funny, so many moons ago, started off just recycling and learning more about the environment and all the challenges that we're facing. And to return back to Hanson, become a selectman, and now start to create policy mm-hmm. that is protecting our environment is kind of neat to see it come all full circle, and I'm really excited to see what we can do in this upcoming spring town meeting.
Great. So I was doing a little bit of research going on the actually, what's the name of it again? Massgreen.org website, looking at what they've done. They've really worked with a lot of different towns in the Commonwealth. And at this point, 93 towns have adopted plastic bag bans. And it really, I think, I'm not quite sure how many years ago, it was only about 13 or 20, and it just ramped up really quickly.
Yeah, Nantucket has had a ban for over 20 years. Mm-hmm. They're the first in Massachusetts.
Right. I think also some of the seaside towns have really taken it on because they see firsthand what's happening with the plastic bags ending up on the beach and in the water. And I mean, there's a lot of reasons to look at this issue. Some have to do with wildlife. Some have to do with our own ourselves, because they're toxic chemicals. Plastic bags are made from fossil fuels. There's the waste and what it looks like. So there are a lot of reasons to try to tackle this issue, and many towns have done it. And locally we have Plymouth, Cohasset, Pembroke just passed a plastic bag ban, Situate, Bridgewater, Duxbury, Marshfield. I think those are the key towns in this area that have done that. So let's start with Matt. I'd like to say what you've been thinking about this, and what's your
absolutely
thought about trying this in Hanson.
Yeah, so I always like the proverb that we don't inherit our land from our ancestors, but we borrow it from our future. And that plastic bags, a lot of people would argue that plastic bags are more efficient to produce, and it's cleaner. And, you know, in some sense, plastic bags are more efficient to produce. But we have to look at the lifespan of the product. Mm-hmm. And that is what I'm more concerned about, where a plastic bag can be produced, and basically the lifespan of it is to go from the checkout to your car, from your car to your kitchen counter, and then to be thrown away. And then it will sit in that landfill for up to 1,000 years, depending on the conditions inside that landfill. Whereas if someone was to bring a reusable bag, you're eliminating all that waste. But at the same time, too, I understand we're imperfect, and sometimes you'll need to have a paper bag or whatnot. And the paper bags aren't as bad. It costs it's a little bit more to produce in carbon, but the lifespan is significantly different, where it only would last maybe a month or two in the landfill. So I think it's time for Hanson to join the rest of the communities that have made a plastic bag ban and lead the other communities, but also our nation as well, to kind of say, all right, it's time that we really uphold our ethical obligation to our future and really make sure that this is a sustainable planet for them to inherit.
Thank you. Very impassioned and nice to see that you've, as you said before, came full circle and now we're working on policy about something that you care very much about. So I'm going to be a devil's advocate just for a minute.
Sure.
There are a lot of people that take their plastic bags home, and then they reuse. They use them in their trash. They use them with their dogs on a walk and things like that. What would you say to those people? Any thoughts about that?
Sure. We're not eliminating every single plastic bag. You're going to still be able to get your plastic bag to put your apples in, or even wrap up your chicken for those folks that prefer to wrap their meats. You'll still be able to use that. But there's also other alternatives too to picking up dog waste or whatever, like the plastic that comes in for your loaf of bread. You can use that, and you just have to get creative with it. And there's, as I said, you're still going to have the opportunity to use not only other bags in your household, but you still have that opportunity for a paper bag if you so choose.
Right. So reuse.
Yeah, reuse is the big thing.
Reusing. And we are talking about the single use. So some of the bigger, heavier bags that you might need that they have in some other stores, it wouldn't be trying to get rid of those, but it's the single-use, very thin plastic bags. So could we go to you, Jeanne, and have you talk a little bit about what your plastic bag ban looked like and why it was important to you or the town, however you want to answer that question?
Well, we went, first of all, we went to businesses. We went to the big markets because that's where most of the bags come from. And we asked them, because people said, we don't want to ban, how about if we just voluntarily do this? And so we asked the businesses, would you voluntarily stop this? And they said no.
Honest?
But they said, but if it's a law, we will comply. So it was made it pretty clear that if you want to do this, you need a bylaw. And so we found out that the Board of Health in our town would be the enforcing agent. So we went to them first. And they were very encouraging. But then we found someone who would come to our meetings and would complain about the inconvenience. They brought up issues of bacteria that might be in a reusable bag. There were all these things which started to make our Board of Health reconsider their support. So we went back and did a lot more homework and then gave them a lot more information to dispel some of the things. You do need to wash a bag occasionally.
Right. You don't just reuse it 1,000 times.
Right. But the claims of people getting sick have been really overblown, and in many cases the false information was given. Then we went to different town boards and explained our situation to them, and then tried to educate the public about this. And for the most part, I'd say people were very receptive. We did a lot of standing outside supermarkets talking to people and having sessions around town. And then
Can you just having sessions around town, was that like a
informational sessions and then showing the film Bagot.
Right. That's a great film.
It is a great film. And I'd say once you start getting people to think about how they use plastic and how essential is it to you? Because most people, they stop right at the convenience place where they're thinking, this is so easy. I'm just used to having a bag and why can't I continue doing that? But once you start saying, if you had a reusable bag, you'd be saving all these other bags. You'd be, working to improve your environment.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't see as much litter. In our town, we have curbside pickup for recycling and trash. And amongst a lot of our boards, they didn't know that plastic bags shouldn't go in recycling.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them proudly
We
told
were.
me that they put it into recycling, and then you see it in the Baggett film, and you could discuss with boards that it clogs up the machinery.
Right, I've heard of that. When you think of the human people that are at the recycling plant,
Yes.
and I've seen a video clip of this, of all this recycling going through, a bunch of plastic bags are in there, it gets stuck in the teeth, they have to close down the entire production to go and get those plastic bags out of there before they can start again. So
Usually
it's
it's every 8 hours.
Every 8 hours they
every
have to
8
stop
hours
it?
They have to go in there with knives and cut all this out. So it's no friend to recycling
Right.
people.
And I did learn today when I was looking at that website, Mass Green, that there are about, let me just double check, 100 billion plastic bags are used in the US each year. And that is the equivalent of 439 million gallons of oil to produce that. So that's part of the impact, that it's like people don't look at a plastic bag and think, oh, here's some oil I'm using. I'm buying gas when I'm buying this. Same thing with plastic bottles.
Yeah.
Those are also made from oil. But about the plastic bags, I saw people will also say, well, I just recycle them. But only 5.2% of those plastic bags are recycled. So that's 94 or something percent that are out there in the
Yeah.
landfill, are blowing in the air or at the beach.
And that's one thing I can say already that I notice in
Oh, you
Marshfield.
do? You've already seen?
We've only had a month, but already I'm driving around and I see that the streets are cleaner. The roadsides are cleaner.
That's amazing.
It is. Because every trash day, if you're driving around on your trash day, I don't know, do you have pickup? I don't know.
Not in Hanson.
We have pickup. You see it. Even well-meaning people, they put their trash in a bin.
Mm-hmm.
In the process of having it go into a truck, it blows all around. It escapes, and it finds its way into gullies and streams, and then eventually, in like Marshfield, into the ocean.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just saw a little video a couple of days ago of a fish. A diver saw a fish, and it was trapped in a bag.
Oh,
And he was just trying to maneuver the bag around to let the fish escape. But, it was a clear plastic bag. It didn't look like the fish was caught.
right.
So it was so sad to see.
Yeah.
But yeah, they end up, and a lot of them end up in the bottom. And so many people say to me, oh, I don't see them.
Oh, so they don't always float once they get the
once
water
they
in,
get
then
into the
sink
water,
to the
they go down
bottom.
to the bottom. And then think about cleanup. That's extra difficult to
Right.
clean that up.
Right.
So.
So I'm going to ask Matt a few questions, but I do want to say the other part about that is they turn into microplastics, which is becoming more and more of an issue, that they're just the little teeny pieces, sometimes microscopic, of plastic that are then inhaled by the fish. They go into our food stream. They're toxic. They go into our bodies. So, in addition to all of those things, it's a health issue also. I have only recently heard about the extent of the microplastics and what an issue that is, and it's harder to clean up because they're teeny little pieces. So Matt, can you say a little bit about the process for doing this? I know it's not all set in stone in Hanson.
Right,
It's
great question. So as you mentioned, it's not quite set in stone just yet. We live in a democracy. I'm going to host a hearing in the next couple of weeks, inviting the companies, big and large, small and large, their customers, my constituents, so everyone can come and give us their 2 cents of what they feel about the plastic bag ban. What can we do to kind of take the sting out of it and just make sure that everyone is heard? After we kind of have that hearing, we'll be able to really start formulating the language of the article for town meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And at the town meeting, the town of Hanson will be able to vote yay or nay for the plastic bag ban. A lot of people get nervous about how quick something can be implemented.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not in any rush right at the moment. It's what I would propose, and the language would be at the end of fiscal year 2021. So not this July, but the following July. So that way the companies can plan and phase out their overhead of plastic bags accordingly and start preparing to make that switch. So I think that will give them plenty of time, a year and a couple of months, I think is appropriate. And then also to give everyone that shops at our stores in Hanson the opportunity to start bulking up on reusable bags if they so choose, or start making other plans accordingly.
Great. So what are some of the issues that you had to deal with in Marshfield from some of the townspeople who were concerned about bags, and what about paper bags and reusable? How did you deal with some of these issues? Because I know there are different ways you can word the bylaws and different issues that each town has tried to figure out.
Well, other towns had different components of their bylaw. For instance, Plymouth limited it to stores that were over 3,000 square feet. And when we brought that issue up with our Board of Health, they didn't like that idea. We had our first draft had what Plymouth had done.
And 3,000 square feet is
That would be small.
It wouldn't be like a 7-Eleven. It would be bigger than that.
Yeah, but stores that were a little larger. They wanted to help out small businesses. But the Board of Health said, no, we want to treat everybody the same. And other towns had made the allowance for a thicker plastic bag being allowed. And our Board of Health said no. So they said no plastic bags. And they did like our allowance for making an exception for the food pantry and any charitable organization that, say, gave out food to people in town, and they give it in plastic bags.
Oh, that's helpful.
They're in the freezer. So they have like meats and things are kept in the freezer. And so that made it easy. And so the wording in our bylaw said at point of sale. So a food pantry doesn't sell food, it gives it away.
Okay. So that
already took care of that.
Okay.
So that was good. And then the wording was that after it passed town meeting, it went up to the Attorney General's office, and it takes several months to get the language reviewed. And then businesses had 6 months in which time to use up their supplies of bags.
And did that feel like enough time? Did you get complaints about
that? It did,
that?
but we also had an exception if businesses felt it was a hardship. Say they had just ordered a lot of bags. They could apply to the Board of Health and ask for a 6-month extension. And I think 5 businesses have done that since it went into effect. And another thing we did was we went around to every business in town, which I never realized there were so many.
Right, I was just thinking, Marshfield is big. That's a lot of businesses.
Yeah. We got a list from the Board of Health of every business that they currently inspect. And that's another thing. The Board of Health currently inspects any business that has food, restaurants, and supermarkets, small marts, but also things like a gas station that might sell chewing gum, or like we have a Marshall's that might sell chocolate or things like that. They all would get inspected. So they gave us their list, and then we added things like hair salons, even things like an optometrist's office that might give a bag with their glasses, or things like that. And we explained that the bylaw was coming in case they hadn't noticed, and almost everyone was ready for it. And I think doing that made it a little easier.
It sounds like the outreach was really important.
It was a friendly visit. It wasn't, this is a nasty thing coming. This is for the good of the town. And people were very receptive. And some of the bigger markets really jumped in. They might have been resistant in the beginning, but by the time the bylaw was passed, they were really ready for it. They made signs saying, we've got all your bag needs handled. So that was really encouraging.
That sounds like a good implementation.
I think that we're still in this adjustment phase. There are still people who grumble, but it helps to have spoken to towns that have enacted it before us, and they can tell us their stories about how it smooths out.
Right.
And there's a pattern. It seems first people may grumble, then they get reusable bags, but they leave them in the car.
Right. That's a big complaint. I always leave them in the car.
Yeah, you get into the supermarket, and then they will go back to the car and get them. Once they do that a few times, then they stop forgetting them in the car. And then I think there's another step where you start looking around at other plastics that you have in your home and say, gee, do I need this?
Right. You think
I think that's probably the biggest effect of the plastic bag, is it makes us think more about what are we doing with plastics in our lives, and how much do we need?
Right. Very good question. I think a lot of people are starting to
so I
grapple
think
with
that was the main thing, the main outcome of this plastic bag ban is making people more conscious of their actions.
Great. So Matt, back to you. Are you thinking about any details that you are particularly concerned about, or want to ask the people in Hanson about?
Yeah, so as Jeanne just mentioned, there were some communities that said, oh, we'll just make a thicker plastic bag, and that will be the loophole around the whole plastic bag debate. So some language that I would want to make sure that we incorporate into the article would be a stitched handle, because you can't necessarily stitch plastic, but you can stitch a paper bag.
Right, and some of the towns have done that, right?
Yeah, and also too, just talking to folks, they always go, oh, that plastic bag ban, they gave us paper bags without handles. And so maybe this also will help with the transition of like, oh, okay, I can get my handles with paper bags. And then I already spoke about the transition, and but the big thing is I just want to hear from people, and just how much of an inconvenience do you think it's going to be? Because as Jeanne was saying, it's just a change of behavior. And then once you start realizing, oh, this is relatively easy, hopefully they do exactly what Jeanne said, which was, wow, we use a lot of plastic.
Right.
And it's all going to the landfill. And it's all going to sit there for thousands of years. Well, my grandchildren and their children bear the brunt of what we left behind.
Yeah. It's good to think of the long-term future and not just what's right in front of us. So there have been some towns that have had something to say about the paper bags and having some of it recyclable, because there is, as you mentioned earlier, there is some cost and some effort in getting paper bags made. So are you thinking about language compared to other towns about 100% recyclable of those, or not recyclable, made of recyclable materials?
Post-consumer, yeah.
Right.
Right at the moment, I kind of want to leave that open-ended. I would love to see 100% post-consumer product making these paper bags, but at the same time too, I'm not quite in that market where I'm looking at, okay, what's the cost? I don't want to bankrupt any business because we want to go with a plastic bag ban, and I want 100% post-consumer bags. So I wanted to be an open discussion. As I said, this is a democracy. Let's kind of craft this together so we can all live with it.
Okay. Jeanne, any other lessons learned that you would want to share, or things you know about either Marshfield or other towns?
Well, I would say I had never gotten involved in town politics. I've gone to town meeting my entire life, but I never paid attention to it the way I do now. And once you get involved in a project like this, you realize that if you care about an issue, you can make a difference in your town, and it's a good feeling. So, if you do something here, you might go on and find another thing that would benefit your town. It's just, you never really think about civic engagement until you try it.
And you're like, hey, you did something, look.
Yeah,
it worked.
And it's been good working with other towns like Hanson. We worked with Situate, we worked with Norwell and Cohasset.
Does Norwell have one also?
Norwell is going to the town meeting this spring.
Okay.
Hull is going to town meeting. Kingston, I believe, is going to town meeting.
Oh, so even more. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the South Shore is going to be.
South Shore's hot.
The South Shore's very
Plastic
hot
free
at
zone.
the moment. Yes, I think it's catchy.
Matt, anything else that you would like to add?
No, well, other than just the usual plug for make sure you come to town meeting.
Yeah.
Right. Do you have the date?
Town meeting, I believe, is May.
And it's the first Monday in May, right?
Yeah, May 5th.
All right.
Yeah.
We won't hold you to it, but
Right,
it's on a
right.
Monday. It's the first Monday in May.
Yeah,
and
first Monday in May, usually at 7 p.m., right at the Hanson Middle School. And yeah, so, but always get involved, come to town meeting, and send us your thoughts, or come to our forum. I hope to have that organized in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out in the Express and WADT.
That's right. I was also thinking about, just to go back to a minute for the reusable bags. I think this is one of the biggest things I hear people saying, oh, I can't remember to bring them. So I know I've been using them for years. I bring them, I do remember almost all the time now to bring them in to the store. But what I find helpful at home is when I empty the groceries, I put the bags by the door. So the next time I go out, the bags are going to the car, which is very helpful. And the other thing is there are other things you can buy too. There are little mesh bags that you can use for your produce and things like that. So there are a lot of ways. And just one last question about styrofoam. I know some towns and cities are looking at styrofoam.
Plymouth is working on a styrofoam ban that's coming up maybe this spring. I'm not sure if it's, but other towns are. Styrofoam is a popular one to come next.
Right. Because I know that lasts. I don't know if it lasts longer than.
Oh yeah.
Longer than plastic.
Yeah.
And I know we have a couple of Dunkin' Donuts in our town, and I read something about them starting in pilot projects to stop using styrofoam when it's not needed. So I think that would, and we do clean up, green up every year in Hanson. The Green Hanson organizes clean up, green up, and we pick up a lot of plastic bags, plastic bottles. I actually had something here. I'll just look at it briefly, talking about the top 10 items that were picked up, and this is not for Hanson, and it was from Ocean Conservancy, and I don't actually know exactly where it was, but 2 million cigarette butts, 1,600,000 candy and food wrappers, 940,000 beverage bottles, plastic caps are next, straws are 5th, plastic bags were 6th on a list of 10. Beverage bottles, and then other plastic bags too. So I suppose if you put those together, it's it's pretty up high on the list.
I see Marshfield has someone bringing an article for nips.
Oh, I think that's been talked about also. We find a lot of nips when we're doing the cleanup.
Yeah.
So I think we'll have to wrap up now. I thank you both for your participation. Jeanne, thanks for all the work you've been doing in Marshfield and becoming the citizen activist. And Matt, thank you for the work that you're doing in Hanson, bringing up the article. And I hope we have a fair amount of people at town meeting to see what we can do to get this through. And at the hearing, I just concur.
Absolutely.
It would be really nice to have lots of participation.
Absolutely.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for watching Green Scene. I hope you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you the next time.